Everybody talks about property like you need 50k, 100k, or even 200k to get started. I started with less than £10,000, and today I have hundreds of rooms across the UK, housing people every single day. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it too, step by step. I'm going to show you why temporary accommodation is the most underrated, recession-proof, and fastest scaling strategy in the whole property game. I'm going to compare it to deal sourcing and service accommodation, two strategies that everybody hypes up, but I'll be real with you, none of those touch temporary accommodation when it comes to stability, scalability, and impact. The reason most people never get started in property isn't money, it's misinformation. They think it's all about owning housing when the reality is you can make a lot of money also by controlling assets that produce cash flow. Right now, the property market rewards people who can solve problems. The role of an entrepreneur is actually to create value and solve problems. And the biggest problem the councils are having right now is housing vulnerable people. That's where temporary accommodation comes in. So firstly, let's compare all three strategies and break down exactly how they all work and also the costs to get involved. Now, the first one is deal sourcing. Deal sourcing is something I've got a lot of experience in. In 2020, I actually started a deal sourcing business. So one of the things that I pride myself with on this YouTube channel is I only ever give advice and information on something that I've done myself and something that I consider myself an expert to be in. So I spent about 1 year deal sourcing, and in that year I made over £40,000. I wasn't really going that hard on it, but I was mainly doing it so that I can raise capital to take on more deals. Now, to get involved with deal sourcing, compliance-wise, it costs about £3,000, and then you can also make around £3,000 to £5,000 on average per deal. Now, the risks involved in deal sourcing is that you've got to go out every day and find investors. Then once you found the investor, you then got to go out there and also find the properties, analyze the deals, make sure the deals stack up, because let's be honest guys, there are a lot of terrible deal sources out there. So you need to understand how to find and how to analyze a deal effectively. And once you can do that, then you can then sell it to the investor. Now, the reason why I didn't consider this as a long-term strategy for myself personally is the fact that I like to do the work once and get paid over and over again. I didn't like the fact that I have to keep on going out there and finding deals and also finding investors to keep selling deals to. So I'll continue to look for a model that can do that. And now in terms of the risk factor, one of the great things about deal sourcing is that it is a low risk strategy because you're not committing to anything long term. You sell the deal and you need to ensure that you have the correct contracts and clauses with the investor, because what you don't want to do is have the investor coming back to you in 6 months time because they haven't bothered to manage the property correctly or tenant the property and tell you that the deal doesn't work. So you need to make sure that you have all the clauses, the investor clearly understands what they'll get themselves into before they sign the contract, and then you get paid, and they do understand that after they've accepted the deal, it's now their responsibility. But overall, I would consider this as the lowest risk factor. Now, service accommodation is something that I have even more experience on. I spent around 3 years doing service accommodation. It's not a strategy that I do any longer, and I'll explain why shortly. It's going to cost you around £7,000 to £15,000 to get started in service accommodation. And the reason why it's substantially higher than other strategies is because as a hospitality market, there's lots of very basic Airbnbs out there, but the ones that are actually making money are the ones that are unique, are the ones that have great interior design. You do have to spend a bit of money to get it up to standard. You've got to think about what your USP is, and then you're more likely to get bookings. I did this strategy for 3 years. What I liked about this strategy is the earning potential. If you've got the property in a prime location and there's a special event on, you can charge sometimes like 3, even 4 times the amount. And the market goes up, and there's lots of different pricing platforms that you can use, such as Pricing Labs, which I used to use, and that sort of analyzes the market and it shows that you have the right pricing structure for that specific date. Now, the cons of service accommodation that not a lot of people seem to talk about is the fact that it is peaks and troughs. So summer months are fantastic. Everyone that's involved in service accommodation in the summer month is extremely happy because you're going to be booked up, going to run at around 90 to 100% occupancy because everyone's out, everyone's traveling, it's all good, everyone's happy, lots of events. However, the winter months are absolutely horrendous, and I found out this straight away. So just putting it on Airbnb, booking.com and hoping that you're going to get booked, it's not going to work. You need to have a database of contractors. You need to have a database of direct bookings so that you can then do your own marketing and then ensure that your property gets booked. I didn't personally like that. I didn't like the fact that every single month I start on a blank canvas. It's a bit like deal source, and every month you start on a blank canvas, but except service accommodation is even more riskier because unlike deal sourcing, you've now got a property. So you might acquire the property via rent to rent. And that means that every month you have to pay the lease to the landlord. The landlord doesn't care if you're not getting booked up. The landlord just wants his rent. The landlord just wants you to fulfill your contract. That's all he cares about. So you've now got this big commitment with no actual guarantee that you're going to get booked. Now in COVID, my service accommodation business failed because what happened is overnight, calendars were shut, no one was traveling, contractors wasn't working, everyone, closed their businesses. So the hospitality business was affected the most. And that made me think, actually, service accommodation is not for me because I want to be in a vehicle that is recession proof. I want to be in a vehicle that's bulletproof. I want to be in a vehicle that's not full of peaks and troughs. And that's where I found temporary accommodation. So temporary accommodation, you're going to need around £5,000 to get started. Now, one of the things I love about temporary accommodation, unlike service accommodation, you don't need all the latest tech, top interior design. The property just needs to be fit for purpose. It just needs to be suitable for the council. It's going to be someone's home and they're going to be responsible for furnishing the property and getting the home to the way they actually like it. So it's great from a business point of view because it means that your upfront setup costs are substantially lower. So if you love hospitality, service accommodation is great. But for me, what I love about temporary accommodation is it gives you predictable income, long-term contracts and government-backed payments. So temporary accommodation is when you take on a property, either one that you own or rent via rent to rent, and you lease it to the local authority, charity or housing provider to house people who are homeless, fleeing domestic violence or waiting for permanent housing. The way it works is very simple. They will pay you a nightly rate, not monthly rent, and that rate is set by the council and it's backed by the government, which means even in a recession, your income doesn't stop. Now, guys, in COVID, I really got stung. I got stung because I wasn't in a vehicle that was recession proof. I was in a vehicle that relied on a great economy, and that was service accommodation. And when COVID happened, it really opened my eyes. And I always say that through the struggles, through the failure, you get to learn the lessons. And that was a very valuable lesson. And the valuable lesson was that I wanted to be in a vehicle that regardless of what's happening with the economy, I'd be safe. I'd be in a secure vehicle that's stable and gives me the utmost financial stability. So the key advantages are guaranteed demand, recurring revenue, recession-proof, social impact, and scalable growth. So let's talk about how you can get started in temporary accommodation with less than £10,000. So firstly, assess the area. Research councils and the rates. Now, with this game, you've got to go where the demand is. It's very, very simple. You call the council or you call the provider and you find out these 3 core questions. Number 1, what specific areas do you need properties in? Number 2, what specific types of properties do you need? So is it 1 beds, is it 2 beds, is it studios, is it HMOs? Then the third question is what are the rates? Once you've got these key bit of information, you can then go out, start building relationships with estate agents, with landlord directly, find the properties, you know exactly the numbers, and then you can then marry the two together and start making money. Secondly is build relationships. Councils value reliability. Now, I always say property is a relationship-based game. The people who build the relationships fastest and the best are the ones that win the game. Stop trying to cut corners. Don't try and hide behind a laptop. Get on the phones, get in front of people, arrange Zoom calls, arrange face-to-face meetings. There were so many times at the start of my journey where I'll just turn up at the council and sometimes I would fail. Sometimes I'll get lucky and I'll be like, look, this is what I'm looking to do. Can I speak to someone in this department? One of the great things about being in front of someone, it's very easy to build rapport as opposed to sending a quick email and trying to get a response. And also as well, even like on the phone, when you speak to someone on the phone, they're very busy and you might have caught them at the wrong time. And a lot of the time they just want to put the phone down on you. Whereas if you're in front of someone, you can actually get their undivided attention. I always find I have a much better success rate. You can put a face and name. They can put a face and name by being in front of the person. Next is understand compliance. So it's fire doors, smoke alarms, the insurance that you need. So you're going to need public liability insurance. You're going to need professional indemnity insurance. You're going to need to be part of the PRS. So that's a property ombudsman scheme. There are different ombudsman services that you can use, but I personally use the PRS. And I think it's great because it shows that you are a good business and it shows that you are willing to provide a service, stick to your word. And if that doesn't happen, then tenants, landlords, third parties can have an adjudicator that can have a look at the situation and essentially solve the problem. So it gives everyone peace of mind, especially as a new company. One of the things that I always like to do when I go to a new council is ask for the specific check sheet that the inspector will be using. And I will go through that check sheet before the inspector comes, and I'll ensure that everything is all boxed off. Because what you don't want to do is have an inspector come out, they inspect the property, they give you loads of remedial works, and then you're just wasting time for a further 2 weeks. So get the check sheet in advance. I know this seems very basic things, but you'd be surprised how many people forget that. Get it in advance, go through it yourself, ensure that everything is sorted, and then you're more likely to get a pass straight away and get the property onboarded as soon as the inspector comes out. If you really want to impress the councils, you need to understand how to find great deals. Now, the main strategy that I focus on is called rent to rent. Rent to rent is a great strategy because it's low barrier to entry, it's low cost. In fact, you can genuinely do no money down deals. And the way it works is very simple. You find a landlord, and you find the landlord either direct to vendor or via an agent, and you simply lease the property from the landlord or the agent, and then you lease it back out to the council. And that's such a game changer because it means that you can then control the property, you can make money from the property without actually owning the property. This is something that I didn't even know existed until around a few months before I got into property. So it's very important to familiarize yourself with the different strategies that you can use to actually acquire properties. So the thing about temporary accommodations, councils are at breaking point. Thousands of families are in hotels because there aren't enough houses. If you can bring safe, compliant homes to the table, the opportunities are endless. You can start small, one house under £5,000 all in. That one deal can pay you every month like clockwork. And that's the thing I love about temporary accommodation. Once the tenant is in the property, there's very little work to do. Meanwhile, deal sources are chasing investors, SA operators are stressing about cancellations, and you're getting a guaranteed payment straight from the council that's government backed. So don't let the idea of needing big money hold you back. Property is about solving problems, creating value, and the biggest one right now is housing. If you can help councils solve that problem, you'll never be out of business. So I actually run a program where I teach people step by step how to get involved in property, specifically temporary accommodation. It's great because if you're a person that lacks clarity, if you're a person that needs accountability, if you're a person that procrastinates, but more importantly, if you're a person that really values your time over money, because time you can't get back, money you can, then this will be a fast track to your success. So if you want to find out more and get involved, click the link in the description.